Hi, my name is Loretta, and this is the Limitless Infinite, a space where you can align your mind to higher vibrations and higher frequencies. This video today is going to be about some information that I came across on Aaron Apke's channel. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. He did a video series on the Law of One, which is a channeled work, I guess, a channeled work from like the 1980s. I haven't listened to the actual channeled works myself. I just kind of watched his video series, but he had some information in some of the videos, and I just had some personal ideas I wanted to express. And I think that some of the information is going to be really pertinent to pretty much anybody, depending, no matter what your purpose is or what your life experience is or how you're polarized. There's going to be information in here for both people. So his video, the one thing that kind of got me right away was he was talking about God and sort of the creation process of the universe and how the universe, God basically wanted to go out and create as a way to explore and express itself in infinite number of ways. That's sort of the creation process. And so he was saying that a lot of people within that belief that God basically did all this to have his own personal creation process to see how life evolves, that within that God has no limitations. And so after he said that, I was thinking, he was saying, it's not exactly true, because God in some ways is limited by whatever the creation is, so to speak, whatever the evolution process is during this. Like, if we say within, our universe, whatever has come to exist within the universe now, that is the limited number of expressions. Like if we were to say this moment, that in and of itself is a limit. But every moment, things are changing and things are different. So there's different, I think, in my perspective, I would say there's infinite new creations or evolving creations that happen all the time. But for right now, there could be limitations on it. So I basically was thinking within this that God is limited by the infinite individual perspectives of expressed experiences. And so what that means is that God is limited basically by, like I was saying, by what has already come into existence. But then for anything that has come into a state of self-awareness, God is limited to basically our perceived, our perception of our own reality and self-experience. So it's almost like we're all individual flavors. And so if God was cooking in the kitchen, he would only be able to use our individual flavors to cook. And while there might be seemingly infinite number of different flavors, there's still a limited variety, so to speak. So we're constantly creating new flavors and sort of new things for God to be able to cook whatever he wants in the kitchen or to create whatever he wants in the kitchen. But there is still sort of a limitation to that by the perception of how we think we taste. How do we think are we spicy? Are we not? Do we, are we flavorful or are we bland? So that basically the range of things that God could create in that process is limited by our own perception of who we think we are, what our personal flavor is, and then sort of the infinite, so to speak, amount of mixtures that you would be able to put together to formulate new flavors or new creations. So it's kind of a never-ending process, which I think is what creates the conundrum. There is infinite, and because we are constantly evolving and constantly changing, there's constantly the availability and probability of new infinite creations. But within any given specific moment, there is sort of a limitation to it. So anyway, I basically was thinking about this, and I thought it was really important to sort of apply this idea that there's sort of these limitations, because part of, I think, what they were saying in the Law of One too is that suffering is really important, that the whole reason we have this duality, especially here on planet Earth in the third dimension, is that we learn the most from suffering. That's definitely what Aaron said on his channel. So in the process of having all these infinite individual expressions of self that God has, that the reason we have this duality here is because within this planet of duality, the suffering that comes from the free will, the choice of free will, which creates the duality, it actually, we're able to learn more and we're able to evolve more from lives that go through certain amounts of suffering. And so he was saying, I think as part of the work too, that in a certain dimension, I think in the third dimension, you're incarnated so many times, but every soul, so to speak, is given like the same amount of suffering and not suffering. And so when you have that equal amount, that balance, then people are really able to choose, then go into the choice of polarity, whether you're a negatively polarized person or service to self, which is what he was saying is service to self people dishonor free will. And I think that's dishonor the free will of others. And then there's positively polarized, which is service to others, and you honor people's free will. And so kind of coming into this time, he was saying too, like 3D is part of this, what I like to call the reality of duality. And so now that we're understanding that the fourth dimension, Earth has already shifted into the fourth dimension, and now we're looking to keep progressing into the fifth dimension, how does this polarity of people, of humans, having this ability of free will to choose either path? And so I have been reading this book, The Light Will Set You Free, which is I don't know if it's completely, it must be channeled work of the Arcturians, but the law of polarity is something that is actually defined in this book as well. It's like kind of like any other law, like the law of karma. But basically what the law of polarity says is that it's anything that is it says two poles or opposites of a thing or condition found in the physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual plane. So there's three primary planes of existence. One's physical, one is mental/emotional, and then the third is spiritual. And so polar opposites are poles or opposites that kind of exist on the same scale. And so when I was thinking about this, I actually just started doing a voice recording when I listened to Aaron's video, and I started really thinking about it. My first thought is, okay, you have negatively polarized people and positively polarized people. And I just kind of started going over in my mind, like, what does that mean? Like, what is the goal of each one of them? And so when I thought about that, I also was referring in my mind to in Aaron's video, he was saying that, even from like religious scriptures that we've read, we hear that there's been always this battle between dark and light. And so this battle between dark and light has been going on for however long people can remember. And so that dark and light is really relative to this polarity, to this choice of polarity. And so I kept thinking, what is that? Like, why is it that we are fighting? Like, why? What is it? And so in my first mind, I know that I have heard before, like, that the darkness has actually, like, there have been many battles that have been fought before and the darkness has prevailed, but it's sort of known that the light will win the war. And so I was like, well, how, like, what is that? Like, why are we fighting in the first place? Like, what is the point of that? And so my first thought was, what happens, like, how is this relatable to your choice of polarity and honoring free will and dishonoring free will? And so my first thought was, well, you know what? If you're light, you shouldn't really even be thinking about fighting. Why would you even be thinking about fighting? Fighting, number one, is sort of like a low vibrational thought. So it's one thing, I guess, if you feel that you need to shield or protect yourself versus fighting the darkness. But then I was like, it has always been portrayed that it's been sort of like this battle, so that there is kind of like a fighting that's going on. And I was like, anytime we're fighting, really what the idea behind fighting is to seek control. So I was like, that's really not a higher vibrational thought form. That's not really something that I would think that light people who consider themselves to be of the light or higher vibrational, that doesn't really seem like something that you would want to engage in, or that you would be engaging in. So if you are like fighting the darkness as a service to the light, that really kind of polarizes you, because you're dishonoring the free will of other people to choose that they can be of a negative polarity. So that doesn't really make sense. And then it's also an act of fear. So if you are of the light and then you're like, oh, there's darkness or dark or negative and I need to fight it. Or even if you're, I think even on some level, I mean, I think shielding can be good because you need to, we're in a time of where we're progressing through evolution, but we're not necessarily at a state that's where everything's really stabilized. But if you're fighting, that's the idea of fear, that you have either something to lose, or that this other thing is going to overtake you or overcome you, so you need to be defensive and you need to fight it and like preemptively do something about it before this other thing happens. That's really what fighting is. Or it's control, and which is neither control nor fighting out of fear is not, neither of them are higher vibrational. So it's like that kind of doesn't make sense. So it almost is like we need to get to this point of replacing the social sort of memory complex idea that we are in this state of duality, and that part of that is kind of understanding, why are you fighting? What is the reason for it? And if there isn't one, which is where the law of polarity is going to come in, you'll understand that there's no reason to even think that this will sort of dismiss and dissolve the whole idea of duality to begin with. And so if you're on the dark side, I kept thinking, well, people are thinking, oh, like dark energies or negative energies are always like trying to control other people, or like a lot of people talk about like reptilian agendas, like coming here to like harvest energy from people, who work with the light or light bodies. And so I was like, how does that make sense for them? They get polarized when they dishonor free will. And so I kind of, at my first was thinking, if a person who you think is negatively polarized and serving self serves anyone else, so if they're part of, and you kind of have to think, a lot of times when people are like, oh, especially about like reptilian agendas and things like that, if you're talking about any kind of group of people with a common idea or a common agenda, unified either under one person or under multiple people, this is also a state of positive polarity, but on a lower vibrational, at a lower vibration. And what that means is, if you're a negatively polarized person and you're supposed to just be serving yourself, but you're banding together with other negatively polarized people because you share the same agenda, like, oh, we want to harvest energy, why don't we work together so that we can trick these people or deceive these people or harvest this energy, and then we'll use it for what we need. They're actually working as a group, which means that they're actually honoring the free will of the people who are on the same polarization as them, which is actually them working together, which is actually a form of, in my opinion, this is my perspective, of positive polarization, because it's service to others. It's saying, yeah, if you help me figure out more ways to deceive other people, then I'm going to help you. And it's like, okay, you're actually serving other people when you do that. So it's a way of polarizing their own energy. But then also, if you have people that are banding together under the directive of one person or one negative entity, or even like, it's like, some people serve God, but it's like, oh yeah, some people serve the devil. It's like, if anybody says that they serve the devil and they are negatively polarized, it's all you have to say is, how can you serve yourself if you serve another master who you call the devil? You can't. You cannot serve yourself while you're serving someone else. So it immediately polarizes them, because the first person that they're dishonoring their own free will, which would polarize them. I mean, or their service to self. If they're service to self and they're serving someone else, then they're not really serving themselves. They're serving somebody else's agenda. And so, and even if they want to say this, well, what I want to do is what they want to do, then that means they're serving others. They're actually serving other people by helping, they're coming together as a group and serving a single agenda. So they're actually serving other people. And so I think for some people that might have been really hard to see, because we think negative action, discordant, negative, sort of malevolent type of energies, that this is just all bad, like quote unquote bad. But basically what that means is, like, when we look at it with the law of polarity, they're doing the same things that people that would serve God, that would band together to help each other in a more positive vibration. It's the same exact scale. It's the same exact action. It's just that one is incredibly lower in vibration than the other. So they're still serving each other. They're still serving one purpose, or they're serving one entity or energy or deity, however you want to see it. And that's the same as what other people do. It's just when they're using that as a way to, like, we'll say harvest energy instead of spread the message of love and light, it's just a much lower vibration. But what we're really talking about is bringing the human consciousness and awareness to the fact that this is what, when you're picking between, when you have this choice of free will, it's actually just the same exact thing on different poles. So to me, it's like, oh yeah, they're still, workers of, technically, we're, to me, workers of the light, but they're just a lot lower vibrational than other beings. And so when you get people that band together, like when we have a lot of negatively polarized people and they start banding together under one agenda, this creates, to me, like what I'm saying is a social memory complex that we consider to be the dark force. So when we're like, oh, the dark force, it's a banded together group of negatively polarized people. And when we talk about the light, it's a banded social memory complex that is people that work with the light. And so now that we have these two terms that have been used previously, dark and light, the social memory complex within each has been like, oh, one is negatively polarized and one is positively polarized. But now what we're talking about is, I wouldn't necessarily, I would say, you can say positive and negative, but it's really just, it's almost like I'll say it this way, because we're all earth beings, I wrote this, because we're humans, what we are is a light being in a physical form, and that physical body is attached here to earth. And the conditions of our polarity within our human form during this incarnation and experience is from this third dimensional perspective. So it means that either one of us, we're still on that same scale. And so this experience, and being that we are all of these same bodies, and that within our human body is this other light body, that basically the polarity that we're talking about of being light and dark is really about like love and like lack of love, or light and the perspective of lack of light. So I guess light would be better for this term, but so a light being is someone who is fully aware of their light and their energy and what that means. And it could be in one dimension or it could be multidimensional. But a dark being or a negative entity is someone who basically is lacking the perspective of their own light. So if you're looking at it this way, then you can understand that we're like the same. So there's not really, it's almost like trying to kind of get into your brain, into your consciousness, that you're not really negative. You're just maybe someone who has yet to discover the light that's in you. Or even just if you're negatively polarized, you're actually doing actions of positively polarized people when you're helping serve other people on your polarization, when you're banding together under one entity with the same agenda. So if you understand that too, you're actually doing the same actions. You're just the lower vibrational energy of like trying to take somebody's energy versus a light being who would just connect to the source to get their own energy and then share that energy. It's just two different vibrational states. So if you know anybody that's negatively polarized, you can fully understand now that it's basically just them not wanting to figure out how to connect to their own source energy. And, light beings are just people who are actively connecting to their own source energy. So I think sometimes when we put on these negative and positive, and because there is this social memory complex tied with the dark versus the light, and that we're fighting, it's like we're not really fighting. We're just all on the same scale, and just some of us are more connected to certain things and some of us are less connected. And when you're really thinking about too in your individual journey, that if you're a light worker, you're not really meant to be fighting. You're not really, the idea of like becoming enlightened and or at least emitting love and light, is that you shouldn't be fighting. You shouldn't be living out of fear. That you basically, when you're serving others, to me, it's easy to be a servant of the light, or a light being, and be trying to focus your attention on serving other people that serve the light. But, we're really here to help those who need it most. And what they were saying in the book about the law of polarity is you don't even have to necessarily try to change anybody else. And it's not really about that. You just got to honor other people's free will to let them choose. It's about raising your own vibration. And when you raise your vibration and then you put yourself in an experience with people who are these lower vibrations than you, it will change other people's vibrations. So if you have a room of 10 people and it's kind of like even, but then like 2 years goes by and those 10 people come back, and let's just say even if 5 of them, even if 4 of them get into a really high vibrational state, they've done a lot of this other work, they're really following their spiritual journey, it will affect the other vibration of people in the room. So that's really all it takes, is just a certain amount of people raising their vibration. And then when you bring that room of 10 people back together, the overall vibrational quality and frequency of that room, or vibrational quality of that room, is going to be higher than it was before. So it doesn't necessarily mean having to change other people into higher vibrations. It's really about you being able to be in your own higher state of vibration. And so when you let go of light versus dark, and you can understand that we are all unified under the same sort of scale, then it will start taking it in and of itself will put you into a higher vibrational state. And if you are a negatively polarized person and you're watching this, or for those of you who maybe avoid negatively polarized people, if you can use more things like forgiveness and love, and respecting the free will of these people to make their own choice, and just looking at them and going, you know what, instead of seeing you as like this opposite that's like unattained, that we're just, I guess, polarized on these totally opposite sides. It's like we're actually have more things that we do in common. It's just, you're have yet to reach this other vibrational state. So sometimes your awareness of this kind of information can allow you to look at someone who's like negatively polarized, let's say, and you'll have a different vibrational feeling. So instead of just being like irritated or angry because these people are always changing your frequency, or you think maybe they're here to like harvest all your energy or this or that, you can realize that it's, they're actually, I like to say that they're actually positively polarized people. They're just a very low vibrational state of positive polarization, because they're working together with other people of negative polarity, or they're banding under the directive of another person, and they're polarizing their own negative nature because they don't honor their free will. So they're positively polarized beings in a low vibrational state. And so if you can just start embedding that into your consciousness and spreading that word to other people so that they can understand that same thing, then it will start to disintegrate and dissolve this idea of duality. And it'll start putting us in a more unified consciousness and a unified state. And so I'm just going to read what else I wrote here. We all sort of, and then I wrote, if we even think of this, if we get to this state, and if you can just pull out one more perspective, so to speak, that we are all servants of the God creation process. And what that is we all serve to be the exploration and infinite self-expressions of God. So we are all this work in process that is God. And so in a way, we all serve the purpose of creation. So if you don't want to have to say God, but we all serve this common purpose of the evolution of the universe, of this creation process. So, and when we do that, when we're given the choice to do whatever we want here, but also that we are infinite individual self-expressions of this creative process, then we understand that no matter whether you're negative or positive, we're all serving each other. So if we take one step out from this from this third dimensional planet and we think of it sort of at a more universal state of existence, you have to understand that we are all serving each other just by existing, by having this life experience. And it doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it. It just means that we're serving each other by simply existing. And so when you do that and you have that in your mindset, then you can really start getting into that higher vibrational state that there really is no difference between us, and that duality really only exists, this concept, this reality of duality, when we are in the idea that there is dark versus light, when we are in the idea that there is a negatively polarized and a positively polarized. If we continue to think in this duality state that like, oh, this is duality and there has to be, there is negative and there is positive. Like I was saying, if you just think we're all positive, just one's lower vibration and one's higher vibration, or we all serve each other no matter what, any way you think of it, when you start understanding that just your human experience and your individuality in it and your individual perspective, it serves the creator in the creation process of understanding our infinite self-expressions and what that is, or our individual flavors. And then, like I said, like we are all here to help each other during our experiences. And so I was writing too, like we're basically darkness. If you are someone that's sort of on the part of the dark or the negative polarity, the negative polarity actually acts as like a catalyst. The negative polarity is a catalyst for how the light can evolve and develop. So I wrote how light reacts to dark, how light forces react to dark forces, or positive to negative. This is the catalyst of creation. And you kind of have to think of it this way, like if everything was light and perfect and harmonious, and you do that an infinite amount of times, it tends to be predictable. The behaviors within it tend to be predictable. That's kind of one of the things that's really interesting about being in the third dimension, interesting about having this duality, is that it's the suffering and the darkness that is the catalyst for a lot of evolution, for a lot of more unpredictable behaviors. And it's not just within, the dark or negative serving polarities themselves. It's how does light deal with that? How does light can choose to express itself when it is in a place where so much of this other darkness exists, or where it perceives this polarity of its own existence. And so, if I was saying before, if everything was light and everything just kept getting created within that would become so predictable that that there's a reason why we have this sort of, or we have gone through the process of this duality. Just it's a part of that creation process to see basically how does light react to that, and we are part of that creation process. And so it's sort of interesting if you look at it that way as well. And then one of the other one of the other things that I was writing is, if you're negative in polarity, you also so if you understand that the darkness is a catalyst for the light to evolve, and how do we deal with it, or how do we integrate it, or how can we serve the dark in a way that brings in more light? Like, how is that part of our enlightenment process? That the darkness, I think sometimes when or negatively polarized people are so into service to self that they don't understand that if you were to say, like, if there was dark forces and their agenda was to come here and harvest energy, that within that agenda, within that purpose, they actually require the existence of light. So it doesn't matter. I mean, even if they come to this planet and they harvested all the light, and then they go to the next planet and the next planet and the next planet, to continue in an infinite or eternal way this process or this agenda, they would literally have to keep, as part of that purpose, the existence of light. They would require it. So it's kind of like its own conundrum, because light, I feel like could permeate in its own existence without necessarily requiring the dark. But in order for light to evolve, so light, it's almost like light in that state would continue to, evolution of light would be very slow, and it would tend to persist sort of within the same range. But with the addition of these negative forces, or this other duality, or perceived duality, it then becomes a catalyst for light to grow exponentially or evolve. So it's like this other side, this more chaotic, sort of dark, negative side, they actually live within a purpose where they require the light to exist in order for them to survive. And then the light really requires the dark in order for it to go through its own evolutionary process. So in order for light to thrive, it needs sort of like this dark. And in order for dark to survive, it needs this light. So it's kind of there, it's intertwined in that way in its growth and its evolution process. So they just can't, darkness or negative forces, like, or negatively polarized, or people on that path to self, they require that other half as part of their existence. And then in order for light to evolve into higher and higher states of consciousness, it actually requires this other polarization to be the catalyst for that. And so I was always saying too, if you're on a planet with people who are all service to self, and they try to take over the planet from all the people that are service to others, at some point you just get, then it's just like a planet full of service to self people. And then at that point, they either have to make a decision. They're either banded together and they're polarizing themselves by helping each other find a way to another planet to do the same thing. Or then it's like, if you truly were an individual that is service to self and absolutely had no allegiance to anybody else, then it would just be like however many billions of people left, just like dog eat dog, and they would basically bring themselves into self-destruction. So without the existence of light, sort of this negative polarization path, if it was to consume everything, it would literally be its own self-destruction. So that's why it requires a certain existence of the light in order to permeate, to exist, and to evolve itself. Otherwise, it would basically just keep on going until it literally wiped itself out. And so it's incredibly hard, I think, to be a person who is truly, like I said, I think a lot of these negatively polarized people end up helping each other to fulfill their own agendas, or to fulfill an agenda of someone else or another entity. And so when they do that, it's incredibly hard to find, I think rare to find an individual that really doesn't not serve anybody else at all. And if you do, the way to know if somebody is that negatively polarized is that what they'll do first. So that individual that is service to self, truly to self, not looking to honor other people's free will at all. This is someone who is negatively polarized, who will, the first part of their progression will be to try to control other negatively polarized people. So like I was saying, like if you're a group of negatively polarized people and you're serving an entity and their agenda, that entity that banded you all together under their agenda, that entity is someone who might be more truly like service to self, because what they're doing is actually now controlling their people of their own polarization to fulfill their own agenda. So they're dishonoring the free will of people who are banding under this agenda, and they're dishonoring the free will of the people that they are, hurting within this agenda. But like I said, if we bring our human perception to the fact that even that entity is still serving everybody by simply existing, by simply being part of the human perception or within the human consciousness. If you are all aware of an entity that is banding other negatively polarized people together in a way to harm any other life here on planet Earth or anywhere else in any other dimension, all you have to know and truly believe is that just that existence of them is a service to everything and everyone that exists, or that has existed, or that will exist. And so when we bring our perception to that and you say, oh, you know what? Oh my gosh, this like negative entity, it's like serving itself and it's doing such a good job. But it's like, oh, you know what? Nope. You serve me too. You serve everybody just by being here. And so by existing and by being aware of their existence, if you can just remind yourself in your consciousness that even they have to serve everybody else by just persisting as part of our creation process within this universe, then they have absolutely no power. So now, as you understand, if everybody is on the service to self path, at this perspective, that is what basically dissolves and also helps to disintegrate this reality of duality. And so Aaron Apke was saying, as part of the love one, they were explaining that the fourth dimension is love. And so, like I was saying, if we understand that we're all positive polarity and our service to others is like, one is very low vibration and doesn't have, it's a very low vibration of love frequency, and one is a very high vibration of love frequency. It still means, as long as we understand that truth, that within that we can still be all within this same sort of frequency of love and light. If you're thinking that, love and light are hand in hand, then when we perceive dark people as a lack of, or a lower vibrational, what I was saying, a degree of minimal light versus a degree of a lot of light, and this is a degree of minimal love, and this is a degree of more love, then you can understand that. So the fourth dimension is understanding that we're all there. It's just we're kind of like in different degrees of the same polarity. This truth and our ability to awaken our human consciousness to this truth and start spreading this message and allowing it to become integrated as part of our world sort of earth social memory complex, which we are now in sort of the time to create. This is what brings us aligned into starting to get into the fifth dimension. And so it's important too, and I will link below, I have a video that has to do with the power of love, and it's about the fact that we all emit the frequency of love. You're never without it. You're literally emitting it all the time. It's just your understanding and perception of how you're amplifying it with certain people. So even if you're looking at something, you're like, oh, that chair, like, I don't love that chair. You're emitting a love frequency of the chair. It's just really low. It's just very low, amplified. But if you're thinking about like someone you love, like in a relationship, you have very amplified that love frequency. So we're always radiating this frequency through us. It comes through us as light beings, but it's either amplified low, or it's like not very amplified, or it's amplified a lot. But I'll link that video below because that'll help you better understand how we are all sort of already emitting this love frequency, which also means that we are all on this positive polarization in different degrees. And then about the social memory complex of Earth, and how right now it's really important that Aaron was saying too, that it's we're coming into a time of, so self-awareness and choice comes like in the third dimension, and fourth dimension is love. So it's also like the earth itself had to have, when it's in the 3D, comes into this, has a sort of state of being self-aware. And I always say, like, that we're talking about climate change all the time. It's almost like, and I always joke, like, oh, the planet's like defending itself, like the planet has its own systems to ensure that it stays like sustainable or stable. And to be honest, like if we really think about it, humans are really the only species that have thrown off the sustainable nature that has always been the earth, or outside elements, like a meteor strikes the planet, that's different. But even from like the meteor that struck the planet with the dinosaurs, like the whole, like earth came back, like earth's really resilient like that. It's like built to be able to be self-sustaining. But humans, the introduction of our species, and as we have evolved over time into the state that we are now we have an effect that where we're losing that self-sustainable quality. And I always say, like, if you look at the earth, like look at like the tsunamis and the fires and the volcano eruptions and the earthquakes, and now we're looking at glaciers melting, and it's like the earth's biosystem of like sort of reacting to what's happening to it, its own systems and mechanisms of putting itself back into alignment are all this, like, weather patterns that we see as not normal. But to me, it's like, the earth has a way of defending itself too, and that sort of this is, this is part of kind of understanding too that Earth is growing in its own conscious awareness as we grow in its conscious awareness, and that's why it's so good right now to be able to do your part, to transmute any of the negative energies you have of planet Earth. Have a video that's all about that if you're doing internal or individual work to transmute any negative or discordant energies you have yourself with other people or things. You want to be able to do that on the next level up, which is the collective consciousness, and to transmute that energy that you have with the Earth itself or any of the other life forms that are part of Earth. And then being able to understand that as we raise our consciousness into these other thought forms, like about letting go of the reality of duality and things like that, and the law and making sure you understand the law of polarity, and that we're all part of this creation process, that this is what will create this social memory complex that we're in the moment right now of creating for planet Earth. Like through our collective self-awareness, we are setting up this social memory complex. And that was another one of the things in Aaron's videos. He was talking about social, how angels are their own social memory complex, and God is its own social memory complex. And Ra, the one who they were channeling for the Law of When, also claimed to be a social memory complex from, I believe it was the 6th dimension. But as we're shifting Earth into the 5th dimension, it's understood that what we're doing right now is basically setting up the social memory complex that will kind of carry Earth into the 5th dimension and then see Earth through into other dimensions as well. So if we can get aligned to sort of getting certain things into the human consciousness and then sort of bringing it into our daily lives and raising our vibrations and our frequencies and aligning our minds together as one, that you can respectfully choose whatever you choose. I honor your free will, but to just sort of align that idea with everybody else's and align yourself with the idea that we're all here to serve each other, just being ourselves, then we also align to create a social memory complex for Earth to carry us into these higher dimensions. So anyway, I hope you liked the video. I was hoping it would be like a little shorter, but I just wanted to try to get all the information in. Stay tuned for more videos. They'll be coming up. I'll make some quicker, shorter ones, but thanks for joining me, and please check out some of the links below if you're looking for more information on any of the stuff that I talked about, and I'll put a link for Aaron's channel down there. He had a lot of really good information. Check it out. The Law of One's really good information there as well, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.